that's why impact is necessary on this campus. I can't speak for many other campuses because I've been housed here, but impact has been that community for Black students on this campus.
This is Post on Campus, and my name is Keisha Wilkinson, and I'm the Wisconsin City Director of the Impact Movement. We are back. It's been a long year of not being able to be on campus, which made it very hard to do these vlogs, and so I'm very excited that you've joined us for our first vlog for this year. And I have Torrie with me. We're going to be diving into a discussion about what does it mean to care for students in this time. We experienced a lot of things in this last 18 months, a global pandemic, racial unrest, losing lives of hundreds of thousands of people, millions across the world, as well as seeing many Black men and women killed at the hands of police and others that believe that they can police Black bodies, and just craziness and politics and just life in general. So we're realizing that we're walking into a different space. Everyone's totally different. We're different. Our students are different. And so we're going to have a conversation about what does it look like to care for students in the time that we're in, and what adjustments and things that we need to think about now that we haven't had to think about before. And so first, thank you, Torrie, for coming and joining us during this time. I want to first just give people a chance to get to know you a little bit better. So where you're from, what's your major, how long you've been involved with Impact, and anything else interesting you would like to share.
Yeah. So, like Keisha already said, my name is Torrie Briggs. I'm a senior here at UW-Madison. I'm a first wave scholar here. My major is Human Development and Family Studies. I also have a certificate in Afro-Am Studies. Graduation is right around the corner, so amen to that. I have been involved with Impact since my freshman year. I was just attending as a freshman, and then my sophomore year, I actually became a student leader, and I served on leadership for a couple of years, and then I had to step away from leadership for personal reasons, health reasons, academic reasons, and just also, kind of relieving my plate a little bit. But I'm grateful that God has brought me back full circle to being back on Impact staff as a student leader here, as I think that Impact is definitely something that is necessary for this campus and that the Black students here on campus need. So I'm really grateful and honored to be a part of this organization again, or movement, if you will, to really just keep this thing going.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I've been blessed with the opportunity to disciple Torrie for a year or two, unofficially, for a couple years, and then officially for a year. And so it's really exciting to be able to see the growth from an 18-year-old to mid-20-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now, and so I'm really excited that you'll be joining us and coming back as a student leader and helping us keeping the movement going. And so I would love to hear a little bit about your experiences in the last 18 months. For those of you who have been following and reading my prayer letters, I've shared about the difficulty that students have been experiencing as it relates to losing multiple family members in a couple weeks, and the stress and anxiety they have been experiencing, the struggle with going from in-person classes to virtual classes, and dealing with all of the protests and the videos of Black men being killed, and just all these different things that are happening. And so I would love to hear a little bit about what last year was like for you. What did you learn? What did you experience?
Yeah, I think in a nutshell, you just hit a lot of what I personally experienced and what I relate to. And I think that one of the biggest things to keep in mind that, like you were saying, this past year wasn't just a global pandemic, right? It was a pandemic. It was continuing the fight of racial injustices. It was seeing, more young people being killed and also being kidnapped. So many people going missing. So it's just a lot of different things happening all at once. And like I said, I can personally relate to losing loved ones to COVID and things outside of COVID, because there are things still happening outside of COVID. But also personally knowing people that experience injustices or racial injustices, personally. And so I think that was something that was new for me, but obviously not new for a lot of people that look like me. And so kind of now being able to be a part of that category is not, so much of an honorable thing, but it definitely like kind of snaps you into reality that, we're not too far from what we're experiencing as a communal, society and as a people here in this society. And so I think that, there was just a lot going on, and I think that all in all, that's what allowed me to really take a step back and really dive into what does it look like to really focus on myself, and not just the health or the self-care that we kind of promote and that looks nice, or that are materialistic, but what does it look like to sit with the bad thoughts that always flow through my head that are now kind of apparent because I don't have that hustle and bustle of the day. It's more just like turning over and, logging into Zoom, and you're not even having to do the basic things to your day that you were used to doing. I don't know how many people stop showering, just things like that. But those are the little things that you stop doing, when you're not only just locked in the house, but when you're starting to really be affected by what's been in you for a long time. It's just not been recognized. And so I know for me personally, I've kind of started my mental health journey before the pandemic or this time period. But I think that was kind of the silver lining to everything going on, that it kind of allowed me the opportunity to say, we're kind of, taking this distance and isolation for health reasons, but also what is this, phase for me? Like, am I just going to kind of go insane by being in the house by myself? Am I going to kind of shut out everyone? Or am I going to choose to kind of reach out to those people who are a part of my circle? Be cognizant of who's reaching out to me. Even when I'm not getting that, am I seeking that from God? Am I still growing in my relationship with Him? Am I still being relational with Him? And so I think all in all, this year was a lot of ups and a lot of downs. Sometimes those downs can be more in your face, but again, I think for me, I'm just grateful to have the opportunity to kind of focus in on my mental health and allow that to, kind of foster everything else for the good being, in terms of, still being in school and kind of looking to what I want to do next, and just being okay with myself. So I think that there was a lot of good to come out of it as well. And so I can't say that it was all bad, and it definitely wasn't all good, but I'm still here.
I think the interesting thing is that, like, when you have the busyness of life, you don't have time to check in with how you're doing, and I feel like that's an interesting way to talk about it, because I feel like I dealt with the same thing, where it's just like you have all this time to think about what's happening, and then you're like, whoa, like, this is bad, like, this is traumatizing, and then you have to deal with this trauma that's in you, but then do you know how to deal with it? Do you know how to process it? Do you know, do you really know how to give it over to the Lord? Because before we were just like, oh yeah, I'm giving this over to the Lord, and then you get busy, and it's easy not to think about it and deal with it because you're busy, and so you're not giving yourself space to think. And so now when you have all this time and you ran out of a Netflix series to watch, and you ran out of all these things to do, because I remember those first 6 weeks, everybody was like, oh, I watch this and Tiger King and like all this stuff, and everybody's excited about what they're watching, and then over time it started to wean, where people started to really struggle. I feel like they were struggling that first 6 weeks too, but I think it got worse over time, because then it was just like the shows are gone, the jokes about like, oh, we all stuck are gone, and now you're forced to kind of sit with like, wait, we're gonna be in this for a minute.
This is the reality.
And so you have to deal with the trauma of that, of losing touch, community, but then also when things happen like George Floyd, then it's like, we're all sitting and watching him get killed on TV over and over and over again, and then you have to sit with that and sit with that pain and be like, what do I do with this? And so I think it's very interesting to kind of think about that we didn't have to do that before. Is that something that you're like, I want to keep doing, even though we're going back to the regular hustle and bustle? Is it something like, you know what, I want to be a steward of practicing checking in with myself and how I'm doing, and what does that look like for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, like I said, with me personally being intentional about doing the work, it's not only about continuing those practices that I've kind of created or came in contact for myself, by myself, but also like building and expanding that and seeing how, okay, I'm bettering myself. So now how can I, avail myself to help someone else better themselves? Because I'm not arrived, or, no one will, but I believe that, someone is worse off than me. Someone didn't take that first step. Someone is still struggling to even admit, to things. And so how do I, walk in the vulnerability and honesty of that experience to encourage someone else, but also be a steward, like you kind of said, of being that encourager, or even helping hand to, oh, these are things that you can do, or these are resources or people you can go to, things you can do. That kind of thing I think is very necessary for myself, but I also think that that's just like indoctrine in the shift that the generations to come are definitely promoting, which I think is very important and beneficial, because mental health is real, and it's important, and it's very much so tied into a lot of what we live and what we do. It's kind of like that thing that you hear always in school, where it doesn't matter what job you're going to get, you're going to have to write. So you need to know how to write, right? Yeah. And so it's kind of that same idea that it doesn't matter where life takes you, what you're going to do, mental health is real. It is something that needs to be looked at, especially us as Black people. I mean, the generational trauma we come with, right? Whether we acknowledge it or not, it's there. And so, who knows what your story is beyond that. And so definitely, yes, being stewards of education and awareness and activation of mental health is definitely important. And I think that that's something that I definitely want to foster here on this campus at UW.
Yeah, it just reminds me of something. I was visiting some ministry partners in July here in Madison, and I went to go visit High Point Church, and Pastor Nick was talking about mental health, and I was like, oh, look at Jesus, this is okay.
Never really heard that sermon in church growing up.
No, I haven't, and so I'm just excited, because I'm like, yes, this is exciting. And one of the things that really stood out to me the most that I remember, and he may have not said it exactly like this, but he said, living in the fallen world, and not like living in the fallen world, you should expect mental health issues. So it's like we're in a broken world. We're going to experience pain. We're going to experience trauma. And so we're all going to have, if not extended time to have to negotiate our mental health, we're going to have moments where we need to deal with our mental health, when we have a loss, when we're in transition, like we have to manage and deal with our mental health in some way or form, because we live in a fallen world. And I think for me, that was just like, whoa. And it's like I was already in this space where I knew I needed to be, in counseling. I am in counseling, but that was like something that really brought a lot of freedom to a lot of people that were in the room, because it's just like, wait, so it's because we're in a fallen world, it makes sense for us to need help to process through what we're struggling through.
And I think that's so important when you just think about the huge stigma that seeking help for mental health is in the Black community, right? There are so many people that will silently acknowledge or, know that there's something wrong, or, everything is just kind of out of their hands, but it's this fear or this stigma that I don't want to be looked at as crazy, or I don't want nobody in my business, or just whatever. And so I think that that just hit it on the head of, you know, kind of like bringing it to the forefront of like, no, you're not crazy. You know, when you're experiencing these things, it's actually just like, it is what it is kind of thing. And so I think that's really important and powerful and necessary to hear, because I'm sure a lot of people have not heard it that way. So that was very interesting.
Yeah. So going to our care for students in this time, with the reality of what we experience collectively as the whole world, the whole earth experienced the trauma of COVID, but also we experienced the trauma of racial unrest and having to make major transitions from from going to campus in person and online. I mean, even the sophomores didn't experience a true freshman year. And I just remember my freshman year. It was amazing. I was so innocent. And I was just like, oh my gosh.
Freedom.
And I just remember the first day that I was walking back to my dorm after my first day of classes. And I was just like, I'm in college. And like, I almost teared up, but I was like walking outside and I didn't want nobody else to see me crying. And so I held it in. And so like, but I feel like sophomores really missed that. Like, missed the nostalgia of the freshman year, learning the campus, meeting new people, building these lifelong relationships. I mean, all of my best friends are from people that I went to college with, except one. And so like, it was so much missed. So with all of these realities, like, what does it look like for us? And this is something we've been talking about with all the staff in Wisconsin, but what does it look like for us to care for students in this time? Like, what's the need, and where does impact enter in?
Yeah, I think that honestly, that's what brings me back to my statement and standing firm in it, that's why impact is necessary on this campus. I can't speak for, many other campuses because, I've been housed here, but impact has been that community for Black students on this campus. Impact has been that supplier of needs sometimes. The meals that we get, that's really important, for some students on this campus, whether, people want to admit it or not. The love that we can come and experience just being in the same space with people that look like us is necessary. I mean, a few years ago, we just got our BCC, right? And this is obviously the third one we've had, but we didn't have that for a long time. And so it wasn't a place that we could go and just say, like, this is our place. And so we started casting those kind of communities and organizations and just groupings of Black people, and Impact is definitely one of those and one of the bigger ones. And so, really just getting back to the root of what Impact has always been and just doing that 10 times harder, getting back to the community, because that's something that we all lost, at a great cause due to the pandemic and so many other things. And so just literally having a space and being able to see people and being able to hug people if they're comfortable, kind of getting back to that warmth and feeling of community is very important. But also just to experience sometimes literally breaking bread together and fostering community in a different way. But also just, getting back to really being the stewards of kind of that just like spiritual well-being as well. Because, there are a lot of Christian-based or faith-based orgs on campus, but a lot of them are housed by, people that don't look like us. And so sometimes there are Black students that experience those spaces, and it's traumatizing even further. I mean, it's in a church, supposed to be, but those are still places that are inflicting negative experiences. I've known students to come from those experiences to experience impact and to kind of be revived. That's powerful, right? Even if it is just a few testimonies to that, that's powerful in terms of the necessity of this space, outside of, the spiritual kind of realm, but also the communal and just well-being and sustaining yourself on this campus. And so definitely a steward for the Black community and just restoring that community.
And I mean, that story is still very common. I mean, and we had a student last fall that signed up to be a part of these ship groups. And she was involved with another ministry. I almost said the name. I'm happy I didn't say the name. But she was involved in another ministry and was highly traumatized by that experience. And so for all of our discipleship groups, we start off with a soul to soul, where students are given ahead of time a list of questions about their life, their family, how they came to know the Lord, if they are in a relationship with Jesus, and like whatever we can think of to get them to think about sharing. And they prayerfully consider what they want to share. And they get about 5 to 10 minutes to share, and then people get a few minutes to ask questions. And so she shared, and she couldn't finish sharing because she started to weep about her experience in this organization that she was in. That it was a faith-based organization, but that basically made her feel like her being black was sinful. That they had to work out her blackness out of her so that she can be a believer in Jesus. Like, I'm simplifying it, but that's basically what happened. And so, even in this, even more in this time, I feel like impact space is even more important because we don't even have the capacity anymore to manage that kind of trauma. And so I think my major prayer is that every student, black student that needs to be in our space, that might possibly get hurt by other spaces, enter into our space instead. That we're able to touch and get every student so that they don't have to experience that, because we're such in a fragile state. My concern is that if a black student experienced that this year, they'll completely walk away from Jesus. I praise the Lord every day that she made a commitment to be involved in impact space, and not only just show up to large groups, but also be a part of discipleship group. This commitment of this time, a commitment to community after having that kind of trauma. And so I think my prayer is that those things don't happen, and that where there is potential for those things to happen to a black student, that God protects them from those spaces and send them to spaces that will nurture them, that will care for them, and not treat who God created them to be as sinful. And so I want to kind of just hear a little bit more about, like, what's your hope for UW-Madison? Like, what are you hoping to see the Lord do this year? What are you looking forward to? Just what do you hope for this year?
I think I like to say that I pray for, right? I think that I've kind of rid myself of that word to just be more intentional and to really kind of be more in this mindset of I am trusting God and I am leaning on Him. So every time, I kind of want to say I wish or I hope, I kind of remind myself, like, I pray. And just, with the, whatever's going to happen, God, you know what's going to happen. But I truly pray that with getting back into being in person and being able to engage, in person, I really pray, similar to what you kind of expressed, that we not only bring in people who want to be here, but we're able to really show them what impact is, and to really allow God to move through this movement and to touch people in ways that they've never experienced Him before. Because I think that, just kind of going back to the testimony that you shared prior, I think that that's why impact is so revolutionary for Black students on this campus, because it's ridding you of those myths that you've heard, that you can't be Black and be Christian, or your Blackness isn't representative in the Bible, or it's not representative in this religion, or what have you, or because you're oppressed, or because you're traumatized, or because you're going through mental health and struggle financially, whatever, that you're not worthy to be here. But in fact, it's the total opposite, because that we have Jesus, and that we can be restored, and that we can experience Him in very fun and youthful and serious and genuine and vulnerable ways. Impact definitely allows that space, and I think that that's what is so captivating to Black students on this campus. So I really just pray that God just utilizes me as a student leader involved this year to really foster that vision and that understanding and just overall love of the community as well. I think just, striving to operate in love in everything we do is going to speak volumes. It's going to welcome people in. It's going to make people feel welcome to come back and to bring a friend, maybe next time, or even become involved with Impact. So I really just pray that, we just continue to be the movement that we have been, and just kind of leaning into what we've been talking about in terms of what we find priority or what we kind of gauge is necessary. Just, kind of bringing in what's going on in the world, what's going on campus, and what's going on with people personally as well. And so just really creating that space of community that people feel that coming through the door, and that they feel vulnerable enough to experience, and confident enough to come back and experience again, and hopefully spread the word to somebody else. So building that community back up for Impact.
Yes, that's good. I like the idea that you talked about, basically turning your hopes into prayers. So like, it's okay to hope for it, and then you know what? I'm gonna pray for it too. And so that's really good. So thank you so much for taking the time to kind of share your experiences and what you're praying for Impact. And thank you all for joining us and listening. To see other vlogs from 2019, 2020, as well as newsletters, or to give, go to impactingwisconsin.org. Once again, that's impactingwisconsin.org. Until next time, bye.